Hey everyone, and welcome to another one of these things. Oh God, I'm echoing like a mother trucker. Sorry, hold on. There we go. I don't know how that keeps happening. Anyways, thanks for watching. I figured I would. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I figured I had the opportunity here to kind of run through my notes for AEW Dynamite for last night. Coming hot off the heels of AEW's maybe best pay-per-view ever. It's a good one. It was a darn good one. But yeah, we'll talk about the show, kind of run through things I liked, things I didn't like, things that speculation, whatever bullshit. We'll talk about stuff. So yeah, very interesting opening segment for the show. It was Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega in the training room, getting iced up and sharing an ice bag and planting the seeds, if you will, of Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, maybe at All In. We will see. But interesting moment there with like Kenny being like, "Why did you go with the Death Riders? You could have just came to me for help." And Will's kind of like, "Well, you weren't here, bruv." So yeah, like just kind of an interesting note there because it was just like, yeah, again, he hasn't really been around. Like he said he wanted to be champion, but he hasn't really been around to be champion. Like, I don't know. So some interesting stuff there, and then of course Mox showing up, and that was just the ice cream on the cake, if you will, where he's got his history with Kenny Omega. He's got this weird mentor relationship with Will Ospreay right now, and who knows? Like, there's a lot of possibility there. Like is the plan Osprey versus Omega? Is the plan Osprey versus MJF? And maybe they're going to do Omega versus Mox for the Continental belt. I don't know. Just crazy to kind of think about that. There's a whole lot of possibility here, and the versatility of the roster is fantastic right now. Just so many people could be on top, and we'll kind of talk about that more as this goes on. And interesting choice starting off the show with the Kevin Knight promo. That is how the show ended after all. It didn't end with MJF winning the championship. It ended with Kevin Knight turning heel, which was interesting. That then, kind of makes sense in a way, that he comes out first. That being said, he's not like a big promo guy. He's not like if you're tuning in for a hot new AEW Dynamite, or yeah, hot new AEW Dynamite, you're a new watcher, and then you're watching a Kevin Knight promo. It's not necessarily like the way to like lure in a brand new fan base. That being said, maybe it kind of is. I don't know. It's an interesting choice. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is. I feel like a lot of this show. We'll get into that more. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead of my own mental notes here and my physical notes. But anyways, yeah, Kevin Knight comes out. Maybe this is going to be good for his career. It's obviously showcasing him as a more prominent player, which is fantastic. He deserves it. He's one of the top wrestlers in that company, which is saying a lot at the end of the day. That being said, the heel turn, it feels a little, I don't want to say forced. They needed, you kind of have to go through these motions as a professional wrestler. You kind of need to go up the next step by doing something big. You can't just necessarily be that top babyface guy who just keeps being a big babyface guy forever. Like, it's I don't want to compare it to this, but I want to compare it to this just for the sake of doing it. It's kind of like when Shawn Michaels turned on Marty Jannetty. I'm not saying that Kevin Knight is as good as Shawn Michaels. Maybe he's better. I don't know. But at the same time, it feels kind of disingenuous to have him as a heel because he's a very likable guy. He's got a very likable moveset. He gets over on all of his big maneuvers, which is all typical baby main event babyface kind of stuff. So there'll be a little growing pains in here. And then Speedball shows up wearing a really weird jacket, and that leads to Kevin Knight attacking Speedball and ending Jet Speed, which is, kind of crazy considering just what, like a week, 2 weeks ago, they were talking about winning the tag team belts together and him becoming Jet 2 belts with the tag titles. But maybe that was a little bit of like, well, it would be Jet 2 belts, but not the tag team titles. So yeah, I love it. I love the multi-layered feuds that they develop in AEW. There's obviously they could have just easily gone into Kevin Knight versus Darby Allin, and that's the feud. And but obviously you have to factor in Speedball, and there's just and maybe Darby's the long-term plan. Maybe that's the all-in match. Who knows? There's definitely lots of teasers all across the board here as to what could be going on and everything. But yeah, I mean, you have Speedball and Kevin Knight, and that's probably going to be the first feud. I don't know where they blow that off. If that's going to be a Forbidden Door match, or if that's going to be a Dynamite or a Redemption. I mean, that would be a great Redemption match, considering it takes place in Montreal. Now, are they going to keep that going for 2 months? Like, they definitely could. I feel like if that's the case, then they have to like do a match first, and then that can match, maybe even two matches before that, and then do the blow off at Redemption. But yeah, an interesting scenario here, and but at the same time, like if you're gonna establish Kevin Knight as a star as a main event star on the roster, there's very few guys better than Speedball to put him in the ring with, because Speedball always makes everybody look like $1 million. So yeah. Ricochet and Jericho was the first match, which I kind of question again, just because like you got a brand new core audience of fans. Maybe there's a lot of pay-per-view buys. There's a lot of momentum happening here, and then you get Jericho versus Ricochet, two guys who Jericho is a veteran of WWE for many years. Granted, he's been an AEW guy since the beginning too, but a lot of people still think of him as being a WWE guy. And you got Ricochet, who primarily again is kind of known as a WWE guy, and maybe that's a conscious decision where they're like, hey, people that are new tuning into the show know these two, so we'll put those two in a match. If I was booking the show, but I'm not, and I have no say in these things, obviously, and my opinion doesn't matter. But I probably would have started off with like a Jack Perry and Mark Davis kind of match first, because it's something new, something different, that brings a different style that you don't see on Monday or Friday nights. But I don't know, just it was starting off the promo and then starting going into like a Jericho match just felt kind of WWE coded. I don't know. Maybe again, maybe that's just intentional because they're getting some of that audience. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm glad the feud's over. It seems like Jericho won the feud, which kind of a weird decision. I think I would have had Ricochet kind of go over. I don't think Jericho needs to be winning feuds in big 2026. I don't know. But and then afterwards, after the bell rang, Tommaso Ciampa came in and attacked Chris Jericho, probably setting up another Jericho feud with this time with Tommaso Ciampa. And again, I don't really know. Maybe we'll get the impetus for this at another point. I'm sure we will. That being said, I don't want this feud to have like Jericho going over at the end of the day, because I don't feel like that needs to happen, and especially because Tommaso Ciampa needs to be a prominent player in AEW, in my opinion. Andrade cuts a backstage promo against challenging MJF, which I am seated for. This feud goes back to before Andrade even re-signed with AEW, or maybe he did sign, but he's kind of in that like purgatory kind of thing where we got fired from WWE, and MJF was basically like, don't come here, Pero, and Andrade is like, they kind of went back and forth on Twitter, and they've got a lot of history together, just there, let alone anywhere else. But yeah, Andrade has earned a title shot, in my opinion, and that would be a very fun match for Forbidden Door if that's the route that they're going. Andrade deserves a title shot on a big show, and Andrade, having history with CMLL, having being the New Japan Global Champion. Like, again, it's not like your big crossover kind of match between companies. It's not Mystico versus MJF or whatever, but at the same time, it's a pretty good match for Forbidden Door. The next match, the Superstation Showcase, which is kind of a random four-way match. Didn't really understand the point of it. Granted, I loved the Superstation growing up. I watched the Braves on there. I watched WCW, obviously. I watched Andy Griffith episodes when they were showing on rain delays. But fun name. I guess there was some sort of money jackpot that they mentioned. I don't know. Didn't really get the point of that. That being said, we got the return of Jake Doyle, which is awesome. I am a big fan of his, obviously, as well. And yeah, very excited to have him back. Very excited to see what they do with him going forward. And then Roosh got the win in that, which is interesting because that at that point it kind of seemed like, oh, maybe he's kind of teased going for the world championship. Maybe that's going to be happening. And then later on in the show, you find out, yeah, it's going to be happening next week. Kevin Knight backstage segment with MJF. They kind of got into it a little bit. Kevin Knight was kind of like, I want that. And then Kyle Fletcher kind of showed up and he was kind of like, well, I want that. So kind of cool, smart storytelling there, being like Kyle Fletcher did have to drop the TNT title on his way because he got hurt, and Kevin Knight won that title. So it's kind of it's nice that they didn't just like move on from Kyle Fletcher being the TNT champion, and he still wants his belt back, which is exciting, and it does lead to possibilities. If I don't know when we get a Kevin Knight versus Kyle Fletcher match necessarily, but because there's a lot of challenges for Kevin Knight in the meantime, and they're both bad guys, so it's be an interesting dynamic there. That being said, maybe Kevin Knight drops the belt, the speedball, and Kyle Fletcher gets it from him. I don't know. But an interesting dynamic there if Kyle Fletcher's going after the TNT belt and his former tag team partner and former best friend Konosuke Takeshita has got the international belt. Maybe there'll be something at All In with combining the belts. I don't know. I don't think they want to get rid of the TNT title. I think they like the cross promotional stuff there. But it would be good to see the unified title back. I feel like you kind of need a second major title in that company. You do have a lot of belts at this point, and I feel like maybe you do need to kind of consolidate. I don't think consolidation necessarily hurts. And I think having like a second big title, especially when you have so many guys that could be going for main titles in that company, it just feels like maybe you do need a second bigger title picture happening there because you just have so much talent, and not all of them can hold the belt at the same time. Um, got a great Mark Briscoe video package. There's clips of Jay Briscoe talking in there, which made me a little teary-eyed. The AEW roster is insane, but I'd love to see, Mark Briscoe kind of in that title picture as well, which again, I didn't was kind of taking down notes and thinking that, and then of course MJF has a big celebration for his championship, and then out comes Mark Briscoe. So kind of made sense there. Kind of felt like that's kind of where it could be going, but it did. And I feel like Briscoe is like a perfect kind of challenger for MJF, where it's just two completely different. You got the fancy guy and you got the redneck guy, and it's just a good battle between the two. So yeah, and then they did announce at that point they did announce that MJF would be facing Roosh next week, and I'm always down. I think that's great. That's what I loved about Darby is you had a world champion challenging defending the title on TV, which is great. That's what should be happening in wrestling. You should be seeing your champion wrestle once in a while instead of some other places where the champion just doesn't really wrestle. Sometimes they don't even show up for months at a time. So I think that's great. Even MJF is going to beat Roosh. MJF is going to beat Mark Briscoe. That being said, I want to see those matches. So I love it. Brodio, what? That's a hell of a tag team name. Brody King and Claudio Castagnoli wrestled each other in the Owen tournament to face Swerve Strickland. Brody King got the win here. Not my favorite match. Wasn't bad, but just then it was very hard hitting, but just kind of felt like it never really got like into that higher gear. Not terrible by any means, just sadly, I love both of these two, but I just felt like this match kind of, I don't know, maybe just under-delivered. Maybe I was just a little out of it at that point, but whatever. Happy that Brody won though, and Brody versus Swerve is should be a good match. The Edge and Christian segment, probably should have had a better way of distributing those disposable cameras. Kind of felt like that just kind of brought things to a halt a little bit. Very WWE coded segment because they were paying homage to a bit that they did back in WWE. I had the 5-second photography T-shirt, even the red shirt with them doing the shadow things. Had that shirt. Love those guys. So I mean, at the same time, it's a complete nostalgia act, and I was fine with it. But interesting to see that Clark Connors and David Finlay were the ones that came out and attacked him. Very vicious attack, very decisive. Like, we just took you guys out completely. Maybe, part of it could be that Cope and Cage are still hurt from that grueling match on Sunday. But that being said, the Dogs took him out. Dogs had a grueling match too. So, yeah, it should be interesting. I feel like this is going to be, obviously the Dogs aren't going to win the tag belts, but that being said, maybe this is a good step for the Dogs as a faction to kind of get themselves on a bigger picture when it comes to a big tag match here. And maybe, this probably is going to be the Forbidden Door match if I had to guess. And obviously the Dogs have ties to New Japan Pro Wrestling. That they're not. I don't believe they technically work there anymore. I believe they're AEW exclusive, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, the TJ tag match made sense that it happened, that they won quickly, considering that like the entire feud is just about time, and Divine Dominion's about like we have 5 minutes, and then they won in a quick fashion as well. I don't hate TJ. I don't love TJ. I feel like they're kind of remnants of AEW past. I feel like the women's division's improved a lot, and maybe they haven't gotten to that same sort of level. That being said, I don't mind them being around and in matches and challenging for the tag belts once in a while. You need that. You need cyclical people, even though it's one of those things, again, even though they're not going to win the tag belts, you need those feuds. You need the tag team champions to get some wins once in a while, and TJ's fine in that sort of role. I do wish that like Anna Jay showed a lot of promise in Japan working for Stardom. That like, hey, maybe Anna Jay is going to be a real competitor, and then she kind of came back and it didn't really click again. So it's just kind of a shame there. Which is ironic because Anna Jay, of course, is dating Jack Perry, and Jack Perry is one of those guys that I feel like he was good in AEW past, and the talent level has risen, and he's kind of risen right along with it. That being said, he's not going to be like a main event guy in AEW. Maybe in the future he could get there again. But he might not be a main pillar at this point in AEW, but he's a very, very solid mid-card kind of guy. He's terrific in that role. And I love this feud with Mark Davis. I feel like this maybe was the last match between these two. Mark Davis got the win, faces Will Ospreay in the next round of the Owen Hart tournament. And yeah, great match between Dungzilla and Jungle Jack here. Again, didn't disappoint. It was a shame that Mark Davis did win it with a basic super pile driver off the second rope, though. I mean, AEW and these basic pile drivers off the second rope, ridiculous. If you get that reference, you get that reference. If you don't, it's a Twitter thing. Takeshita is with the conglomeration. That was kind of exciting to see. It's interesting dynamic there. We'll see if that sticks or if it's an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of scenario. But could be a fun group, and I do think Takeshita needs a good change of scenery and maybe some goofballs around him. And I mean, Takeshita still works for DDT, so he definitely can be a goofball. So there could be something really fun that happens out of that. And then the backstage bit with Ospreay and the Death Riders before the trios match. Pac gave him a cold reaction, like Will Ospreay was, trying to be part of the Death Riders, and Pac completely no-sold them. Would be great to see that match run back between Ospreay and Pac. They had a tremendous match at All Out 2024, and love to see that run back. And then Ospreay being like, "Yo, my entrance is this way," and the Death Riders were going the other way so they could go out the back of the building. It was just a nice little touch there. That Ospreay is just like still that lovable goofball who's still a good guy, and he's not part of the Death Riders, but he hangs out with the Death Riders. It's just a fun. I like the dynamic. I know the dynamic gets a little heat there. I am enjoying it. I think it's fun. It's a good way to kind of it's a good way for Ospreay to be like, "All right, I'm 100%. I'm teaming up with my friend or teaming up with my enemies." But like people are just like, this is weird, right? And who knows? Good thing. It's just I like it. I know I saw people today that still don't like it, but whatever. Nothing special but the six-man tag match. That being said, it was a good match. I enjoyed it. It was fine. Got the point across. Andrade versus Ace Austin. This was very much the one, like, yep, this was the collision match. It just kind of was there. It happened. The Andrade camera spot that he takes, like, takes a picture with a girl and she kisses him and all that stuff. I feel like we're on month, what, 3 or 4 of this. It had a moment. It was well. I thought it was cool, but I feel like at this point, like, it just kind of feels a little unnecessary. Maybe it's just me. I just feel like maybe not every single Andrade match this needs to happen in. I feel like this would be better if it was, if they chose their spots with it instead of doing it every Andrade match. And then lastly, the main event of Collision. Well, technically, I guess Ace Austin and Andrade was the main event of Collision, because after Collision ended, we got a Philadelphia street fight, and a lights out Philadelphia street fight between Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander, and really, really enjoyed this match. This was my match of the night, to be totally honest, and not just because they had light tubes. That did help though. Because I feel like if you have good death match or lights out match, you should have some light tubes and some crazy stuff going on here. Some apples from the crowd that you smash your opponent with and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought this was a lot of fun. Great match between these two. Really settled the blood feud. Stat Daddy got the win, but Cheeto looked like $1,000,000 in this match too, and this elevated both of them. And I feel like this was probably the end of their feud together. I've said it before, not necessarily here, but I feel like hopefully this isn't like the last we see of Sheeta, because I really love Sheeta. I think she's killing it in her current role, and I worry that this is going to be kind of one of those like blow off things, like she lost this and now she just goes away for another year. And I feel like she's really been finding an element, adding some good depth to the AEW women's division that's really kind of needed. Somebody like Sheeta to step up, especially with Tony Storm out and Mercedes out and Willow out. They kind of needed somebody to step up, and Sheeta's kind of done that. And obviously, Stat's going to be kind of in that big role too. So yeah, overall, I was really happy with this Dynamite and Collision. I feel like maybe there are some things that could have been better, but at the same time, it was a very much an AEW Dynamite show. So yeah, liked it a lot. Hopefully you did too. Hopefully you watched it. Either way, you should definitely go and watch some wrestling, because wrestling is awesome. There's a 2-hour Collision on Saturday if you want to check that out. I highly recommend it. I'll be watching it at some point this weekend. And yeah, I need to finish grilling some potatoes and chicken. So thank you for watching. And yeah, watch some wrestling and enjoy.